me Ayawadha, who's been taking care of the monastery as the resident monastic. And we have a couple of yogis staying at the monastery as well, doing a good job of providing service to the monastery and meditating and studying. And I see that we have a couple of people have typed in their greetings, Mary and Gita. And this is Mary. Perhaps she's back from her trip. And welcome back if you're still abroad. I hope you're having a good time. And Bhumika has sent in some Anjalis. Hello, Bhumika. And starting a few minutes late, we just finished up the evening puja here and then came down. And we're starting a few minutes late. I had to get the camera set up properly, and it's a little bit crooked, but it's good enough for our purposes. But let's see, there's been some big news recently. We celebrated a Sala Puja on Sunday, which was the commemoration of the Buddha delivering the Dhamma Chakkappavatana Sutta, which lays out the Four Noble Truths. And so a big day for us, one of the three big holidays of Theravada Buddhism. And we had several attendees, and we did a circumambulation of the Buddha image with flowers, incense, and candles in the afternoon. And we had Dhamma talk and chanting. It was a really wonderful afternoon. And Wasabi's just typed in. Hello, Wasabi. And Mike as well. Hello, Mike. And Saturday, Bhante Sumita, we had to say goodbye to Bhante Sumita. Unfortunately, we asked forgiveness of him and asking for forgiveness ceremony on Saturday evening. He actually left Sunday morning on to Pittsburgh, and then he'll be going on to the UK to enter the Wasa there. And I entered the Wasa here on Sunday, so I'll be here for the next few months. And Bhante Sudaso will be returning on the 29th of July from Italy, and he'll be entering the second Wasa in August. So he'll be here for the second 3-month period the Buddha allowed us to enter the Rains residence. Ayasoma is there in Italy as well, so as I'm sure most of you probably know. And they recently completed the purchase of the land in Italy. So Empty Cloud Italia is now a real reality. It's owned by Empty Cloud. And so they'll be establishing a Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni monastery there. It's big news. They found some land that they thought was just perfect to have a monastery, a forest monastery. And so they'll be, we're celebrating that and looking forward to learning more from Bhante Sudaso when he returns. He and Ayasoma may be doing live streams about it as well. I'm not aware, but they may be doing some live streams also. And we have Anjali's from Anjali as well. All right. So we have a Dhamma Talk live stream, and I'll start out by doing a traditional homage to the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. And that is the ancient Pali that we have from our suttas. The Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa is homage to the blessed, the worthy, the rightly self-awakened one. And in Thai tradition, it is common to follow it with Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami, which is I render homage to the Buddha, I render homage to the Dhamma, and I render homage to the Sangha. And I'm reminded that it's also quite traditional in Thailand, actually. See, I ordained at a monastery in Thailand in the lineage of Ajahn Chah back in 2014, and quite traditional in Thailand also to add the Buddha's first admonishment after deciding to teach. He said, "May those of you who can hear me bring forth your faith, for open are the doors to immortality." A momentous occasion in history when, for the first in a very long time, the doors to immortality were open. And perhaps I'm reminded of this also because of observing a Sala Puja recently on Sunday, wherein the Buddha, it's the commemoration of the Buddha giving the Dhammacakka Sutta, as I said, and the Four Noble Truths. And it's the first time he revealed the way to immortality. The Four Noble Truths being a teaching that only Buddhas can give to establish a religion. And so opening a very special period in history. And here we sit about 2,500 years later at what some would say, and the tradition says, is the halfway point to the end of Buddhism. One of the other special things that happened on that day was the birth of the Noble Sangha, when Venerable Kondanya, he in Thailand they would say Kondanyo. In the Palis, the way the Palis usually said in English, we'd say Kondanya. He saw the Dhamma that day on hearing the teaching of the Buddha and became a Sotapanna. And so the Buddha then called him Anya Kondanya, or Kondanya who sees. Kondanya realized his determination from many lifetimes before to be the first to see the Dhamma in a Buddha's dispensation. And after developing parami over many lifetimes, he was able to realize that dream of his, that aspiration. I gave a talk on, or I should say about Asala Puja on Friday, the 19th of July. It should still be on the YouTube channel, and I talked in some depth about the development of parami. By no means exhausting the topic, but talking about the development of parami and Anya Kondanya's success in this regard, and also the two chief disciples of the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, in their aspiration to become chief disciples. And I said in that talk, the subject reminded me of the encouragement of the masters in the lineage of Ajahn Mun, that as long as we keep trying to reach our spiritual aspirations, we cannot fail. And I noted it's only human at times to despair, and in fact also to take a pause. But as long as we pick it up again and keep going, we'll reach our goal. The message of found very inspiring over the years. And I think any of us who stick to a spiritual practice for a substantial period of time can't help but find that we do benefit from it. That looking back, we see that we've grown and it's helped us, and so we can gain faith in this principle. Well, if I keep doing it, if I keep trying, I'm bound to keep developing. And in fact, we have a statement from the Buddha in the scriptures saying that as long as the monks practice rightly, the world will not lack for arhats, or meaning enlightened beings. As long as the monks practice rightly, the world will not lack for enlightened beings. And so it all comes down to the practice, practicing rightly. And according to tradition, the interpretation of the word monk can vary a bit. In its broadest sense, it simply means anyone who sees the danger in samsara, the danger in the round of rebirths, of being born and dying over and over again, and all of the problems and the suffering that come in between each birth and death, such as old age and disease. And so anyone who sees the danger in samsara, by that standard, is a monk, or as in the Pali would have a bhikkhu. And if some such person practices rightly, then they can advance on the path to enlightenment. It's commonly held in Theravada tradition that it's possible for householders to attain all the way up to anagami. One master I knew in Thailand said, they can attain all the way up to anagami. If they leave home, then even if they're not an ordained bhikkhu or bhikkhuni, they can even attain arhatship. There's an example, at least one example of this in the suttas, Bahia to Jagariya. But this master recommended focusing on, if you're in the household life, focusing on Sotapanna and Sakadagami. There's an example of a man in Thailand who he went into the monastery to ordain, a layman, and he was already a Sakadagami, actually. He'd attained Sotapanna and Sakadagami while working as a rice pounder. And he was following the very simple but very powerful meditation instruction to repeat the word Buddho over and over again to dispel thinking and draw the mind together into unity. And so while he was pounding rice, he would say Buddho, 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 Buddho. It's such a blessing to have a very simple and humble job. And I don't know of how he attained insight, how he investigated to attain the insight knowledges and see path and fruit, but he must have followed on that. Perhaps he was the kind of person who had so much parami and his mind was adept at analyzing and investigating that when it became calm, he was able to see very clearly impermanence, for example, something like that, and was able to progress through the insight knowledges that way. It's perhaps slightly tangential at this point to mention, but worthwhile that those of us who find it hard to make the mind calm, it can be the case that someone who makes their mind calm can, if they find it very hard to make their mind calm, it may be because their mind is very has a strong tendency to analyze and to investigate. And so if they can make the mind calm, then they can gain insight very quickly. And even just the first insight knowledge is a very powerful one at the discrimination of mind and matter, wherein the heart, for the first time ever, becomes self-aware. And we know that there's more to us than just the body. The heart learns deep down. It's my belief that this is the basis for the claim of one meditation master describing investigating pain all night, when he said that after investigating pain in his meditation with the mind concentrated, he stood up at dawn and fear of death had died at that night. It's my belief that it was this insight knowledge that he attained, and that he no longer had to fear annihilation at death, because he saw that he had a mind. His mind became self-aware and knew there was more to him than the body. And so if we can work at it, if we work hard at making the mind calm, even just attaining this first insight knowledge has great power to it, great benefit. It's a story of another layman. A layman in Burma became quite a great master in his time. Many disciples, meditation master, and I never knew him personally, and I just heard the story secondhand. But the principle, I think, is very accurate. He was a shepherd. He would take the sheep out to graze, and then have the day to sit under a tree while they grazed. And he would watch out over the sheep, and he also would follow a simple meditation instruction he'd received, which was to be mindful of his breathing. And he developed a technique of breathing relatively heavily in order to fix his awareness on his breath. And he could do this. He could oversee the sheep and pay attention to his breath. And I don't know if he ever lost any sheep, and I suspect he may have lost some sheep, and his mind became very concentrated. But he eventually went into the monastery to ordain as a monk, and by that time they say he'd already attained Sakadagami as well, practicing breath meditation as a simple shepherd. So examples of two people who had garnered a great deal of inner wealth in their very simple livelihoods. And with the attainment of Sakadagami, they were, by the scriptural standard, the masters of Thailand uphold this. They were destined to have at most one more birth, but it's said that after they ordained, they both attained arhatship, enlightenment. And so how do we do this? How do we develop the parami? And how do we develop the path? And how do we do what Anya Kondanya who sees, and so many after him, so many disciples of the Buddha and the disciples of the masters see the Dhamma, find the way out of suffering, and go beyond the round of birth and death. It says in the suttas that there are conditions for the attainment of Sotapanna. And these are faith, generosity, morality, and wisdom. Faith, generosity, morality, and wisdom. And folded into wisdom is learning as the first level of wisdom. Wisdom having three levels: learning, and contemplation, and meditation. There's a faith, or saddha, generosity, or dana, and morality, or sila, and wisdom, or panya, from the Pali. Sometimes we see in the scriptures the term chaga used for generosity instead of dana, and sometimes this is explained as something like giving up. And it reminds me of a teaching the Thai meditation masters have about sacrifice. I suspect chaga means this, sacrifice. And they say one who sacrifices is close to nibbana, close to enlightenment, close to liberation. So we have these four: faith and generosity, morality, and wisdom. And based on the statement in the scriptures, the Theravada tradition has come to see them as the prerequisites for developing the path to enlightenment. We have from the commentarial tradition a longer list of qualities. The parami I've referenced already, usually translated into English as perfections, but also can be. I typically like the term spiritual virtues, and these are indicated as, they originate with the story of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, I should say, after having received his prediction from the Dipankara Buddha that he would attain Sammasambuddha, trying to discern what qualities does he have to develop in order to attain to be Sammasambuddha. And he, through his own insight, sees these 10 perfections. And so we have these two kinds of ways of looking at it. These conditions for the attain of Sotapanna and the 10 perfections, which can be developed. And meditation masters down to the present day stand by the 10 perfections as well. First appearing in the commentaries, the meditation masters stand by them as well. The Mahasi Sayadaw of Burma referencing them, when talking about the qualities we have to develop in order to attain, and the condition how quickly we can attain. The Thai meditation masters referring to them quite frequently, and admonishing us to and encouraging us to try to develop our parami. And we have in these the faith and generosity and morality and wisdom. We have qualities that form fundamentals of the Buddhist path as well. So common amongst the meditation masters to recommend, perform worship services and develop your faith in the Triple Gem. Develop faith in karma as well. Your actions really do have consequences. And they recommend to practice generosity frequently. As it says in the scriptures, to do good deeds and do them frequently. Do them over and over again until you develop a love of doing good deeds. And then we have the frequent recommendation of the Buddha in the scriptures to follow the 5 precepts. And in fact, even better, the 10 courses of wholesome action. And we have the admonishment from the Buddha in the scriptures and from the master stretching down to the present day that, keeping the 5 precepts is essential if you want to be reborn again as a human being. They form the very basis of what it means to be a human being, to be a true human. Even though the mind can be on several different levels. We can have the body of a human being and the mind of a deva, or of an angel, you might say, or even of a very high divinity. Or we could have the body of a human being, but the mind of an animal, the mind that's on the level of an animal. Or even worse, some of us may have known human beings, that is, people who had the bodies of human beings, but who were in dramatic states of suffering, like ghosts or hell beings. And what is the distinction? And the meditation masters of Thailand use this term, the true human. The true human is one who keeps the 5 precepts. And we see in the scriptures, the beautiful individual is one who keeps the 5 precepts. And we remembered that on Asala Puja, when we were doing our circumambulation of the Buddha image on the south lawn here at Empty Cloud with our flowers and candles and incense. The flowers represented our sila, that's our morality, precisely because morality is beautiful. And that's such a good thing to remember and get in touch with. There's so many different standards for beauty. And what constitutes true beauty? If we get to know someone over time, if we get to know somebody over time, we see the truth in the old saying that beauty, the meaning physical beauty, is only skin deep. And of course, that kind of beauty is also in the eye of the beholder. And I think perhaps we all know someone who had the true beauty of good morality, and we came to cherish how beautiful that was in them. And it's a kind of beauty that only grows more and more wonderful over time as one becomes more skilled in morality. And while physical beauty is destined to fade, the beauty of morality can grow. And while we have to leave the body behind, because it is inevitable that the body will fail us, as all beings who are born must die, it is the beauty of morality that we can take with us into the next life, have the opportunity to be reborn as human beings again, or even higher if we follow a higher course of morality. There's some contemplations on the beauty of morality, what constitutes true beauty. And then wisdom. We have wisdom, which can be described in so many different ways. One way is by the standards of right view of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sometimes it's stated simply in the scriptures, the wisdom that sees the rise and fall of conditioned phenomena. A very simple statement of wisdom. One kind of wisdom that you can develop when the mind is concentrated, while you're investigating. You see the rise and fall of conditioned phenomena at the six sense doors. Could be stated in terms of right view of the Noble Eightfold Path, as I mentioned. Some examples being from mundane right view, the right view that leads to happiness and pleasure in this life, or within the round of rebirths, you could say, within the round of rebirths, even to better rebirths, but does not take one beyond the round of rebirths. The right views, according to Buddhism, of that in fact there is mother and father, that there are the consequences of good and bad actions, that there is this world and the next, and that there are priests and contemplatives who, having seen this world and the next, expound it for the benefit of the many. Some examples of the mundane right view. And then the supramundane right view, that right view that leads beyond the round of rebirths, is the Four Noble Truths themselves, the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, which is craving, or tanha from Pali, literally meaning thirst, and the truth of the cessation of suffering, which is the abandonment of that very thirst, which results in nibbana, the liberation, the immortality that the Buddha spoke of. Then the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path of practice leading to the cessation of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path, which we have also categorized as the three aggregates of morality and concentration and wisdom. And there are other ways of describing wisdom as well. So we have, for example, within the seven factors of enlightenment, we have appropriate attention as one form of, as right view expressed as appropriate attention in the seven factors of enlightenment. So one other example. And my personal belief is that the reason the Buddha told us that we should all contemplate the five subjects for frequent recollection is that they constitute aspects of right view that we can see in this present life, in the here and now. They're clearly evident to every one of us, that we don't have to take on faith. So we can contemplate these without any blind faith. We don't have to take the Buddha's word for it or anyone else's word for it. And the five recollections, the Buddha said that everyone should contemplate frequently, or I am subject to aging, I have not gone beyond aging. And I'm subject to illness. I have not gone beyond getting sick. I am subject to dying. I have not gone beyond death. And everything that is dear and pleasing to me will change and will become separated from me. And the fifth one being, I am the owner of my actions and live dependent on my actions. Whatever actions I do, whether they are good or bad, of those I will be the heir. The fourth, I forgot to mention, is I said, it's everything that is dear and pleasing to me will change and be separated from me. I've read that it also can be translated kind of in inverse, you might say, or reverse. It's I will change and become separated from everything that I hold dear. It's also another experience we have in life as we change. And we separate ourselves from those things we formerly held dear, for example. So these truths of old age, disease, and death, separation from what we hold dear, and we are the owners of our actions, the Buddha said to contemplate frequently. I believe that they're in order to help us develop this wisdom parami, aspects of right view that we can see clearly in this life. In karma, we don't have to take it on faith that there are consequences of good and bad actions. As the Buddha pointed out to his disciples in the suttas, we can see the results of good and bad actions in this life, even before seeing the results in future lives. We can see, for example, that if we commit a crime, we're more likely to go to jail or be punished. We can also see that if we practice generosity, that it will help us in our relationships with other people and other living beings. And it will help us develop a good reputation, for example, and it will bring joy to the heart. And as we recollect the good things we've done, this also will bring pleasure to us and help us to make the mind calm, and we can unify the mind around this theme. It's actually a formal meditation object. So with all of these benefits we can see for ourselves right here in this life. And we can see, if we keep good morality, that it will endear us to other people. They will come to see us as beautiful, and they'll trust us. And it'll bring us pleasure when we reflect that we're giving this as a gift to all living beings as well, because if we keep our precepts, then beings don't have to fear us. For example, by keeping the precept that we will not kill any living being, we're giving all beings freedom from fear that we will kill them. They can be free of this fear because we've undertaken this precept and we keep this precept. It's one example. And this can bring us some satisfaction and happiness that living in this way, we're giving this gift to all living beings. And as with our good deeds, we can recollect our sila, our morality, and consider how good it is to have this morality. If, for example, we keep the principle of not killing any human beings, just as an example, and each one of us has to consider our own principles. But if we keep the principle of not killing a human being, we can reflect. For so long now, I've kept this precept, and I have not killed a living being, however long it's been. And yet every day in this world, there are people killing other human beings. And so it's not to be taken for granted, actually, this precept. This is something special. And this can bring us some satisfaction and happiness. And it's another theme around which we can calm the mind and unify the mind. One of the inspiring themes, as has come to be known in the Theravadan tradition. And along with that, as the Buddha said in the scriptures, the one who has the 5 precepts is confident, and he'll be confident in the midst of any assembly. So no matter what group of people he finds himself in, he or she finds herself in, he or she will be confident because they have good morality. So these are all benefits we can see right here in this life, and we can contemplate these frequently, these 5 subjects. In Thailand, when they translate it, the 5 subjects for frequent recollection, and they translate that we should recollect these often. They translate it as tukwan, meaning every day, every day. And every day when we contemplate one or more of these subjects, we'll grow in wisdom. It's more effective if the mind is calm. And so it can be especially effective to do this after we've meditated. If we have a daily meditation practice, we make the mind calm for a while. And we contemplate one or more of these subjects and think about it a little bit. The reality of it will sink down deeper into the heart. We'll develop our parami in this way. And this is very good merit, and then we can share merit with our parents and our relatives and any deceased loved ones and with those we've harmed in the past. In this way, make another great deal of merit. It's a sharing of blessings, and in a way, it's giving. I asked one meditation master in Thailand, I said, does it count as merit on the level of giving, or does it count as merit on the level of meditation, which is much higher? And he says, oh, it's meditation. It's meditation. It's on the level of meditation. It's much higher merit than the generosity. Generosity is essential. We have to have generosity in our lives. But the merit isn't as strong as the merit of meditation. And he said, sharing merit is on the level of meditation. And so I think it's akin to loving kindness meditation, which in Thailand is very closely associated with. So if we make the mind calm, recollect the 5 subjects, share merit, make a great deal of merit, we'll develop parami, we'll make the mind calm and bring happiness into our hearts. And that's a wonderful way to spend some time each day. And through meditation, we develop wisdom at the highest level. They say that there are 3 levels to wisdom, as I mentioned earlier. We find this in the suttas, in the Digha Nikaya, and I forget the sutta. There are 3 levels to wisdom. There's Sota Maya Panya, which is the wisdom gained through hearing. As I said in the ancient times, and if we have reading, that would be the same, these days. And then there's the wisdom gained through contemplation. So when we think over what we've heard, when we think it over, then that's a higher level of wisdom. We develop wisdom to a greater extent that way. And then the highest level, the 3rd level, the 2nd level, by the way, in Pali is the Chinta Maya Panya. Chinta Maya Panya. Then the 3rd level, Bhavana Maya Panya, is the wisdom developed through meditation. And that's the kind of wisdom you get when you develop and you make the mind calm. And I don't know if, I have to admit, I don't know if we make the mind calm and we develop the 5 subjects of frequent recollection, if that counts as wisdom on the 2nd level, or if it counts as wisdom on this 3rd level, when you get into the level of wisdom on the level of meditation. I'm not sure if the Buddha distinguished the wisdom on the level of meditation. Is that the insight knowledges that you get once you're in samadhi, which is not simply making the mind calm, like we might do after a little bit of meditation, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour of meditation, but the real samadhi, where the mind is unified. But we also don't really need to split hairs. If we make the mind calm for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or something like this, and then we use this opportunity to recollect the 5 subjects or do another kind of wisdom contemplation, and perhaps I'll talk about some others, then we capitalize on this opportunity to develop our parami anyway. And it's very good karma. And so we take advantage of this opportunity. We do this, we just go ahead and do it. And in fact, we will probably find that it makes the mind calmer as well. And if we have time to continue in meditation, we just go ahead and continue. Perhaps we contemplate a little bit more, or we return to a meditation object that's oriented towards calm, develop our calm even further, and then we might do another wisdom contemplation. And I talked about this a few weeks ago in a guided meditation and Dhamma talk. I talked about it as the dance of calm and wisdom. We make the mind calm, do a wisdom contemplation, work with it for a while, and see what kinds of emotions come up. If emotions do come up, and watch those emotions, experience those emotions mindfully, or If they're difficult emotions, they're hard to be with, we might practice some loving kindness meditation or recollect the good things we've done, something like this that is inspiring or brings happiness to the heart. Or we might go back to a calming technique, like practicing mindfulness of the breath, for example. And then after things have settled down, if we've been mindful with a difficult emotion, or if we've been contemplating a wisdom technique and then the mind is starting to get distracted, well, so for many different reasons, they come back to the idea of practicing calm and unifying the mind again, developing the unity of awareness around a theme. And in this way, you can develop to the level of samadhi and go into developing insight over time, if you're able to practice continuously for a long period of time. Right. And so this is the development of wisdom on these three different levels. And if we have the faith came first in these four conditions for the attainment of stream entry. If we have the faith to give it a try, we may hear some Buddhist teachings. We hear about generosity or keeping precepts or practicing wisdom contemplations and meditation. We say, well, perhaps this is worth a try. And there's even scientific evidence now supporting meditation practice. If we have enough faith to give it a try, and then we get some results, then this develops our faith. We can develop more and more faith in the Buddhist path. So this comes around in a circle, you might say. And this strengthens our desire to practice more. We might start practicing generosity if we haven't yet, or practice generosity more. We might practice more sila, take on more precepts, or we might practice more meditation. Or at least it gives us the motivation to continue practicing as we have been. When it comes to generosity, there's so many ways to expand our practice, and perhaps it's a good time to talk about developing our practice and expanding our practice, because now we're entering the wasa. I've entered the wasa. The monks of the monastics who are entering the first wasa have already formally entered the first wasa, but still at the very beginning. And it's quite common amongst faithful Buddhists, even in lay life, to undertake a determination to increase their practice in some way or other for the period of the wasa, the 3 months. And generosity is one way to do that. We might look at how can we expand our generosity practice. If I practice acts of generosity so often, can I practice more frequently? If I practice generosity in such and such a way, can I practice in another way? If I occasionally take a box of donuts into work, brings a smile to everybody's face. Well, what if I take a box of donuts into work more often? Or if I also bring in some coffee? Or what if I still take in the box of donuts to work as often as I would, but I also go into to do some active service at a meditation center or at a monastery or some other venue? How can we expand our generosity? They say that someone who's really trying to develop parami, on the path of developing a lot of parami, you can take generosity even to much higher levels. There's the act of generosity, which is giving our own belongings, and giving of our time. There's the next level, the higher level of generating parami, is to give even of our bodily organs. I know a monk who did this. A lay supporter of the monastery was in desperate need of a kidney, and he was having a difficult time finding a match. And this was at one of the Western monasteries in the Ajahn Wade lineage. And he'd been a faithful lay supporter of the monastery for a while, and the Sangha knew him, and they were concerned about him, what was going to happen to him. And so one of the monks volunteered. Volunteered one of his own kidneys because he was a match. And so he underwent the operation and gave this young man one of his own kidneys. And so he himself was not old. I don't know his exact age, but it seems he was at most 35 years old. And he's still in the Sangha. this venerable monk, after having made this great act of generosity, he's lived the rest of his life now with one kidney instead of the two. This is quite a sacrifice to make. So anyone stops to think about it, if you have one kidney, and what will happen to you if there's a problem with that one kidney? This was quite a dramatic sacrifice to make. In doing so, he has the satisfaction of knowing, down to the present day, this was years ago, at least 10 years ago, I think more like 15 or 20, down to the present day, that he saved another human being's life. And so even just in that one way, one can take satisfaction that they've done something really good with their lives, and they haven't wasted their lives. They've capitalized on the opportunity they had in this life to do something really good. And in addition to that, he's been living the monk's life, if I understand correctly, now for more than 15 years. So then the next level of development of parami is when one is willing to sacrifice even one's life. And this is one, it's one that's difficult to talk about or even imagine. And there's stories from the Jataka tales, the tales of the Buddha's former births, where he did just that, where he sacrificed his own life for others. And we see right here, we see people doing that sort of thing, risking their lives anyway for other people in many ways. I remember one religious man, after he was a Hindu monk, if that's the right term. I apologize if it's the wrong term, but a male. He seemed to be a monastic. I know very little about the Hindu faith. But speaking at a public event in commemoration of the attacks on the Twin Towers in New York and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., the September 11th attacks, and he pointed out to the crowd gathered at the memorial service there, at which many different religious of many different traditions were speaking, and he offered this reflection that in that event we saw two different kinds of people. We saw the kind of people who will kill others. And we saw in the people who responded in the aftermath of the emergency to save the lives of those who were injured, and to the firefighters, for example, who responded to the emergency calls, that we see that there are others who are willing to risk their lives for other people. And so it's quite a sobering and hopefully an inspiring recollection that there are many different kinds of people, and every day we're deciding what kind of person we are. And we have the opportunity to make a choice. I'm hesitant to talk about sacrificing one's life. Of course, we have to use our wisdom. And of course, when we talk about trained firefighters, they were doing just that. They had training, and they knew what they were doing. And so it's an important reflection as well. Okay. Now, so if we talk more about developing, I talked a little bit about generosity now, and we can talk also about how you develop your practice of generosity with your mental practices. I'm not sure quite how to state this, but there are different aspects of generosity. There's what you give and how often you give, for example. And you can consider who to give to, and the scriptures say to give to. Give where you're inspired to give. Give where you think your gift will be well used. The Buddha didn't single out anyone to give to, but he said, give where you feel inspired, and give where you think your gift will be well used. And he was calling on us to use our own discretion, and to also to give, to develop this wish to give and this desire to give, and have it come from within. And it should be coming from within. The decision of what to give and where to give and who to give to, because then that's where the good karma is, in this the power of decision, of chaitana, as it has it in the Pali. That's where the good karma is. And even though he did say, to be thorough, he did say in the scriptures that giving to different people has different results. But he said, when asked who we should give to, he said you should give where you feel inspired, or where you think your gift will be well used. And it's interesting. Someone is tuning out. It says here in the writing on the chat, because there's a presidential campaign speech that's going to interrupt, and I might mention that I think that these things are recorded, and they can always be watched later. That is, the presidential speeches. Presidential speeches can always be watched later, and all right. Of course, we all have to decide what's most important to us. All right. And so another aspect, though, is our mental states when it comes to practicing generosity, our mental states. And so in one sutta, the Buddha discusses this. He says that there are several different kinds of aspirations you can have when practicing generosity. One person might give with the thought, I want to receive something in return. This is actually a relatively common way of practicing generosity. Some people, they give thinking, hopefully this person will give me something even better in return later on. I'll get something out of this from them. Another way of giving is, you might give with the aspiration to receive material benefits in return due to the power of karma, which is a natural part of generosity. And you might also give with the aspiration to attain to a better rebirth, which the Buddha says is possible, because that is the power of generosity, and you can get a higher rebirth. And if you at least keep the proper level of sila in practicing generosity, your rebirth can be endowed with many material benefits as well. And in fact, they say that generosity is necessary for the material benefits we have in life. In Thailand, it is said that if you have food to eat, then you've practiced generosity in the past. That generosity is necessary for us to have the material benefits that we have in life. Or the Buddha says you might give out of loving kindness for someone. You want someone to be happy. You want someone to have the things that they need. You want to provide for them out of loving kindness. It's another reason one might give. And of course, in giving this way, if you have loving kindness and you develop your loving kindness through this act of generosity, that's going to develop your loving kindness parami, your metta parami. And it counts as a kind of bhavana, or meditation as well. And so this enhances the karma dramatically. So this is a really wonderful thing to do. Not only will you get the material benefits, as a result of the good karma you're doing, but you also develop in these other ways as well. And then the Buddha says in the scripture, but the very highest determination when giving is thinking that through this act of generosity, I will make my mind more beautiful and more noble. Through this act of generosity, I will make my mind more noble and more beautiful. This reminds me of multiple things. This reminds me of the development of parami. The word parami doesn't show up at all in the suttas. It comes to us in the commentarial tradition, and it's upheld by the masters over the ages, as I mentioned. And it's our inner wealth, as they say, and in practicing generosity, we develop our generosity parami. And it seems the Buddha is saying, by recognizing this, that we're developing ourselves internally. This act of generosity has more power for our spiritual development. Knowing that we're developing ourselves internally in this way has a power to it that enhances the development. Okay. It reminds me that they say that the parami within the heart all have different colors. The famous Tibetan flags, for example, the prayer flags and the International Buddhist flag. I'm not very well versed in this, but they have the different colors on them. They're the colors, they say, they attribute to the parami within our hearts. That if you could see with a mind that has samadhi, and you have enough parami to do so, then you can see the parami within the hearts of other living beings. And they have these different colors for each parami. And so if you can see these rainbows of colors within living beings who have well-developed parami, you see these colors and see these beautiful colors within the hearts of other living beings. And they say that if you go to the holy sites in India, for example, the 4 holy sites where the Buddha was born, where he taught the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which we commemorated just last Sunday, and so the second one actually would be where he attained enlightenment. I'm sorry, Bodh Gaya. And the third one would be where he taught the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and then the fourth, where he went to a part where he went to Nibbana, the Parinibbana of the Buddha. These 4 holy sites. They say that the reason people have such powerful experiences there is that the Buddha planted his parami right there in those spots. And we see it recommended in the Digha Nikaya, the suttas, where the Buddha recommends in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta this pilgrimage to the 4 sites. And so many pilgrims over the years have gone to these sites, and they say it's such a powerful experience. I know one man who said, I'm a terrible meditator. He's a Caucasian American man, and met him here at Empty Cloud. And he was talking about meditation. And turned out he'd gone to the 4 holy sites, and he said, I had such a wonderful time there. It was so amazing. He said, for example, I'm a terrible meditator. He said, personally, I don't think there's any such thing as a terrible meditator, but that's what he said. He says, I can't sit still, and I can sit for just a little while, then I have to get up and do something. I can't really sit. I'm a terrible meditator. But I was there, and I forget which site it was at. He said he sat down under a tree at one of the 4 holy sites, and he sat there meditating for 3 hours. He said he sat down there and just was going to meditate for a little while, and he just felt so good meditating there. He sat there for 3 hours meditating. He says that's never happened to him before or since. It's the only time it ever happened. It was at one of the holy sites. And the meditation masters say one of the reasons that these holy sites are so powerful is because the Buddha himself planted some of his parami right there. Each one of the 4 holy sites. Something I can't vouch for, but I've heard so many wonderful stories. I wonder if it's true, and maybe it is true. And I can at least recommend. I've heard so many wonderful stories that if you go, maybe you'll have a wonderful time too. And so, practicing generosity, we can consider these aspects of it: giving out of loving kindness, and giving with the thought that by giving, I'm making my mind more beautiful and more noble. Another way of developing the practice of generosity is with practicing with our mental states. In one sutta, the Buddha talks about when we practice generosity, we want to be joyous in the preparation to give. And then when giving, we want to calm the mind on giving. I think this is because if we make the mind calm, then the experience of the act is more profound. And then he says, and after giving, we want to be elated. After giving, be elated that you have given. And so before giving, be joyous in the preparation. When giving, calm the mind on giving. And after giving, be elated. Be elated that you have given. And so it's quite common after giving, for example, here in the monastery, if people give food or other requisites for the monastics, we'll chant a blessing. And we chant a blessing every day, actually, when people come and give requisites or food, so as part of the meal proceedings. The monastics will chant an Anumotana chant. Anumotana meaning rejoicing. And so there's good karma for us, actually, to rejoice in the generosity of others. So we get some good karma from this. It's good karma when you rejoice in the good deeds of others, whether there's generosity or undertaking precepts or meditating or what have you. And the lay people share merit, and they have an opportunity to rejoice. They've given, and they perhaps rejoice also in the goodness of the monastic life. And so rejoicing together, we do a traditional chant, and it's quite a special occasion every single day. Here at the monastery and in the monasteries all around the world. And so after giving, be elated. And if you know of someone else who's doing good deeds, if you recall this and rejoice in their good deeds, this can even be a kind of meditation related to mudita, or sympathetic joy, I think. So it's another kind of meditation you can do. It's very inspiring and uplifting. Right. In terms of developing practice, in terms of developing our practice, in terms of morality, talked about the 5 precepts and hopefully the 10 courses of wholesome action as well. And it's also said in the suttas, and the Buddha is asked, what is the way of practice for monks and what is the way of practice for lay people? And the Buddha responds, well, with a long description of the path of practice for monks. And then he talks about the practice for lay people, and he says the way of practice of lay people is different. For householders is different. And he says for householders, you should keep the 5 precepts every day. And 1 day a week, you should undertake the 8 precepts. This has come down to us as the Uposatha Day in the Pali. It's observed in Theravadan countries and now in the West as well. You should observe the 8 precepts 1 day. I said a week, every week. It's actually on the lunar quarters by the ancient lunar calendar. So it works out to about once a week by the modern solar calendars that we use. And so 8 precepts, and then you should also practice generosity. Okay. And this 8 precepts on the 1 day of the week, the Buddha describes in much more detail in a sutta that he gave to Lady Visakha, his foremost female lay disciple, and many other lay disciples as well. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya, and it's called the Muluposatha Sutta, Muluposatha. The Muluposatha Sutta, in which the Buddha talks about good ways, he talks about the right way of practicing this uposatha, or this holy day. And he also talks about one wrong way of practicing it. But there's the wrong way of practicing it and the right way of practicing it. And he goes into detail about the 8 precepts, how to practice the 8 precepts on the Uposatha Day, and also meditation techniques that he gives specifically for Lady Visakha. And so I think it's worth talking about in some specificity. He says the precepts are to refrain from killing any living being. And then the second one is to refrain from stealing. The third one is to refrain from any sexual conduct whatsoever. The fourth one is to refrain from false speech. The fifth one is to refrain from intoxicants. The sixth one is to refrain from eating past midday. In fact, he recommends eating only 1 meal on the Uposatha Day, so 1 meal in the morning. The seventh one is to refrain from entertainment and also to refrain from beautifying the body. So it's quite common in Theravadan countries for those who are observing the Uposatha Day to go into the monastery and spend the day in the monastery, perhaps even stay overnight. And they wear all white, just white, a white shirt and white slacks, or white for ladies, a white skirt, and just perhaps tie their hair back if the ladies have long hair, the gentlemen also, and not wear makeup or jewelry, this kind of thing. So no beautification, and also not accessing any entertainment. Then the eighth one is to not use high and imposing seats or beds. Some translate this as high and luxurious. And so the Buddha says, for example, sleeping in the sutta, he says you sleep on the floor or on a mat of straw. And so see in Theravadan countries, they'll lie down on a mat, very, very thin, of just bamboo strips, a single strip of bamboo, single strips of bamboo interwoven, I should say. So it's a very thin mat, or imitation bamboo, plastic mats. And sleep on the floor this way. And these are the 8 precepts. And the Buddha told Lady Visakha, he recommended cleaning the mind, as he put it, with the meditation themes of recollection of the Buddha, recollection of the Dhamma, recollection of the Sangha, recollection of Sila, and so the morality she's kept, and recollection of Devas. And he doesn't teach her the recollection of Chaga Nusati, or her generosity and sacrifice. Interesting not to be taught, because in the standard list of included with these other 5, it would make the 6th, but he doesn't teach it. Perhaps because Lady Visakha had such an advanced, was so far advanced in the practice of generosity, and already did practice a form of recollection of generosity anyway, as she discusses in another sutta. But these 6 inspiring themes kind of go together in the Theravadan tradition. And he tells her, in this way you practice throughout the day, cleaning the mind with these 6 meditation themes. Recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And actually, as I said, he gives her 5. Recollection of her Sila, and the recollection of Devas. And of course, as we likely can practice the recollection of our own generosity and sacrifice as well. And he talks about practicing in the suttas. He talks about practicing with other meditation themes as well, such as recollection of the breath, meditation on breathing, or even meditation on the skeleton, as I recall. So different themes are appropriate for different people. And so one practices with a theme that is right for one, and oftentimes in consultation with the teacher. And the Buddha tells Lady Visakha that this Uposita day, practicing this Uposita day endowed with the Eightfold Sila, has more value than being king of the entire world, he says. Because even if you ruled over the entire earth by righteous means, and if everyone on earth loved you, you had access to all the resources on earth, even if you had the perfect queen, it would not match the value of this Uposita day with the Eightfold Sila, because the Uposita day with the Eightfold Sila is a condition for heavenly rebirth. And being reborn in one of the heavens is greater than being king over the entire world. And so many Buddhists, if they don't already practice the Uposita day regularly, they'll undertake it during the wasa. They make it a determination to do it perhaps once a month during the wasa, or twice a month, or perhaps every single week. And it can be done on a day of the week that's convenient, for setting aside the day for keeping this kind of sila, these precepts, and for practicing meditation. And some people might not practice a full Uposita day, but they might say, well, they'll put aside more time to practice regularly, such as one day a week practicing for several hours. One gentleman I know is going to practice for 3 hours consecutively. I think he said 3 Sundays during the Uposita day. This is a big step in his meditation practice, and I'm sure it will bear great fruit for him. You'll find that after practicing for 3 hours, it may be difficult at first, but the mind is definitely calmer afterward. And we'll come to see it's very beneficial. All right. Now, the Buddha, in discussing this, he says that it's this Uposita day with the Eightfold Sila has more value than rebirth in heaven. More value than being king of the earth, because you're reborn in heaven. And he also says in the sutta that the qualities for being reborn in heaven are these qualities that I mentioned before as conditions for the attainment of Sotapanna. It's this faith and generosity, morality, and wisdom. faith and generosity, morality and wisdom. In practicing the Dewa-nussati, or recollection of the Devas, one can recollect, he says, that whatever faith the Devas have to be reborn in the Dewa realm, I too have that kind of faith. In the generosity the Devas have to be reborn as Devas, I have that kind of generosity. And in the kind of morality the Devas have to be reborn as Devas, I too have that kind of morality. And the kind of wisdom the Devas have to be reborn in the Dewa realms, I also have that kind of wisdom. He's talking to Lady Visakha, who was his foremost female lay disciple. So she was probably greatly endowed with all four of these. And since the Buddha talks about, the practice of the Opposita Day being a condition for rebirth in the heavens, I think it's quite clear that the Opposita Day helps us to develop these qualities. We practice sila and we practice meditation, and in time we'll grow in faith. We undertake it due to our faith in the first place, thinking this is worth trying. And if we also practice some generosity on that day, and that rounds out the four, which is quite common if we go to stay in a monastery for the day or something like that. We perform some service at the monastery or practice some generosity. And so I think that these two destinations, the attainment of heavenly rebirth and the attainment of sotapanna, could be seen as two destinations on the same road. The Buddha recommends lay people to practice 5 precepts as a basis, and to observe the religious observance day once a week, the Opposita Day, with the 8 precepts, and practice meditation. And it's quite clear we'll develop in these qualities, and these qualities are the basis for rebirth in the heavens and for attaining sotapanna by the scriptural standard. Qualities the masters recommend developing to the best of our ability, even striving if we can. If we go back to that question of how do we develop in parami and see the Dhamma, as Anya Kondanya did. He needed more parami to not only see the Dhamma, but to also be the first to see the Dhamma in the dispensation of a Sammasambuddha. If we can see that, well, we wouldn't require as much to see the Dhamma. If we can just try to see the Dhamma in this life, standing as we are now at the halfway point in the Buddhist religion. Can we make the effort? Can we put forth some effort? Develop in these qualities. Put in place these practices, such as the 8 precepts on the observance days. Practice. Set aside a day for practice every week. Thinking this will help me develop good qualities. If we have faith in rebirth, it's a condition for heavenly rebirth. And if I can take it even further, perhaps I'll attain sotapanna, perhaps right in this life. My personal feeling is that this is recommended, of course, and I had a great experience myself practicing the Opposita Day in lay life. I practiced it for about 10 years in lay life and found it to be a truly wonderful experience over time. So I always highly recommend it. But I think that for those of us who want to attain sotapanna, we also would want to try to set aside some time for more continuous practice. It's not everyone will do it. Not everyone can find the opportunity. Not everyone will make the opportunity. But personally, I'd recommend trying to set aside some time, perhaps 6 months or a year, spending time in a monastery or a meditation center or something like that. And these opportunities are there. For many of us, this may sound like quite a reach, spending that amount of time living a lifestyle of meditation. When we look at it in the larger scope of our lives, we say 6 months or a year is not really all that long at all. If we look at how much time we spend in school, how much time we spent going to college, for example, for those of us who went to college, how much time we spent in high school, how much time people spend pursuing advanced degrees. If we compare that to spending a year, I've known people who took sabbaticals, for example, from work, or that they, or they simply take a year off from working, something like this. Some people will do it when they have time off. For example, if they're finishing college, they might go on a spiritual journey, go into a monastery and spend a lengthy period of time practicing. And this is so worthwhile. If we think about it, they say, modern science says, if you practice meditation 20 minutes a day, over the long term, it will have tremendous benefits for you. Mentally, in terms of your IQ, making you smarter. Psychologically, your emotional, your EQ will grow. You'll be much better at managing your emotions. You'll feel better, and it'll be good for you physically. And that's only practicing 20 minutes a day, over a long time. What happens if you practice, 4 hours, 5 hours a day for a year? Can you imagine the rate of growth that you'll experience? What would that be like? What would that be like to have that kind of an experience? What kinds of things could you work out? How would you feel? What kind of a person would you be at the end? What kinds of insights would you have? How would you see life? And you would be stronger afterward, inside, from keeping this kind of a practice of morality, of staying in a monastery or meditation center, and you develop calm. You become a calmer person, not having the stresses of householder life and living in a secluded way from all the various sense stimuli that we experience in life, in the outside world. You develop this inner strength, as I described, from keeping the precepts. And in meditation, undoubtedly, you would grow in so many ways, psychologically, in intelligence, and in fact, actually, I think you would be healthier as well, physically. And then on the radar comes the real possibility of something like attaining. People often want to attain. Well, what is samadhi really like? What is it like to have continuous mindfulness? What is it like to develop a heart of loving kindness towards all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world? What is it like to develop insight knowledge? How do you know if you're getting insight knowledge? And what is it like to attain path and fruit? What is it like to have the eye of Dhamma arise? And in the experience of the fruit of Sotapanna, one goes to Nibbana. And then one comes back. And from that point forward, you never need wonder, is there such a thing as Nibbana? What is Nibbana really like? Because you've actually experienced it. They say the experience is very humbling. You realize that all your life you've been looking for satisfaction and happiness and pleasure, thinking there must be something better, there must be something more, there must be something better. Is this all there is to life? And so you've searched and searched and searched, and when you attain Sotapanna, you find actually it was always right here. It was always right here all the time. And I just wasn't looking in the right way, and I wasn't looking in the right place. I wasn't looking right here. I was looking somewhere else. And I wasn't looking at things the right way. All I had to do was just practice, and Nibbana and satisfaction, liberation and the ultimate pleasure were always right here. And all I had to do was make the decision to practice, to really try. And it was always right here, just waiting. I could have taken up this gift that the Holy Lord Buddha, the perfectly self-enlightened one, fought so hard to win, and that he gave to all of us freely. All I had to do to accept this gift was just to practice as he taught. Because Nibbana is always right here. Just waiting for us. All right. Leave these thoughts for your reflection, for your contemplation, and for your practice. May you all be well. May you develop in the Dhamma. May you have a wonderful night.
Annayang Dhammakataya sadhukarang dadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Have a good night, everyone.